Okay, now we're going to take a look at the present perfect progressive. We've completed the present perfect, and now we're going to move on to the next tense, which is the present perfect progressive tense. What's the difference between the present perfect and the present perfect progressive? Well, to start with, the present perfect progressive is set up differently. Instead of using have plus the participle, if you take a look on page 19, página 19, in the workbook, you can see that the present perfect progressive is set up again with have and with has in the third person. But the difference is, instead of using the participle, we're going to use been, which is written for you there so you can see it, plus the verb, plus the ending ing, ing, que em português seria ando, yendo, como comiendo, dançando. The tense is used similar to the present perfect, but not in all cases. Não em todo caso a gente vai usar isso como present perfect tense. E em português isso seria algo como eu tinha estado estudando, que também não traduz palavra por palavra. So when you use it in English, you're going to say always have plus the verb to be, which is going to be in the form of been, which is the participle, and then the verb, and then ing. So let's go ahead and look at some examples of when we're going to use this. If you look at the board when I explain the present perfect, now we're talking about the present perfect progressive, which is also known as the present perfect continuous. I prefer progressive because when you're talking about the progressive tense, you're talking about an action that is in progress. And I explained this in the other tapes when we did the present progressive tense and the past progressive tense. Well, now we're talking about another action that's in progress, and it's right there in the verb. When you see past present perfect progressive, the word progress is right in there, which means it's an action that's in action. It's happening now. So the difference between the present perfect progressive and the present perfect is the following. We've got to take a look at this one right here. When you see this rule, we can use interchangeably. Interchangeably quer dizer que a gente pode intercambiar, a gente pode usar um ou outro. Quando tem isso aqui, você pode usar present perfect, igual que eu já ensinei para vocês, ou também você pode reemplaçar com present perfect continuous, ou progressive tense. Uma e outra funciona certinho, não tem problema. Agora, esses dois aqui não funcionam para o present perfect progressive. Então agora, tem que esquecer desses. Porque esses aqui, você usa só no present perfect. Esse aqui, present perfect or present perfect progressive. And they are interchangeable. One could replace the other. Eu podia falar, por exemplo, uma ação que começou no passado e continua até hoje. Por exemplo, eu tinha estudado 3 horas. Eu também podia falar, eu tinha estado estudando 3 horas. De novo, não traduz em português. Esse é um português mais ou menos errado, como que eu estou falando, porque quando você vai de uma língua para outra, as coisas não dão certo. Mas em inglês, dá certo sim. Então, você tem que falar assim, I have studied for 3 hours, or you can also say, I have been studying for 3 hours. Então, qual é a diferença de present perfect e present perfect progressive? A primeira diferença é que não pode usar essas razões aqui. You can't use these right here. Outra é que present perfect progressive é mais específico, quer dizer que é mais o presente do momento. Por exemplo, se eu falo, I have taught English for 3 years. I'm using present perfect. I'm using the participle, taught, for the verb to teach. I have taught English for 3 years. Repeat. I have taught English for 3 years is the present perfect, not the present perfect progressive. So why can I use the present perfect progressive in its place? If I say, for example, the present perfect, I'm talking about I have taught for 10 years. 10 years. Maybe this semester I'm not teaching. Talvez agora, nesse semestre, eu não estou trabalhando mais. Talvez tomei descanso, mas ainda sou professor. Então, it's the general present for the present perfect. The specific present, específico, is for the present perfect progressive. For example, I have been teaching for 1 hour. I have been teaching for 1 hour is very specific because at this very moment I am teaching. This very moment. Whereas the present perfect is going to be an in general type of thing. I've been teaching for 1 hour. That's perfectly acceptable. You can interchange them. But if I say I have been teaching for 3 years or 7 years or 10 years or whatever, you're going to have an opportunity there to see that maybe in that actual moment, talvez naquele momento mesmo onde o passado chegou até o presente, que talvez não está acontecendo. Não está acontecendo em um momento. Então, a diferença das duas é uma está falando daquele mesmo momento e outra está falando do presente general, que presente general pode ser 1 week, this week. If I tell you this week, this month, this year, this century, that's the present. But where exactly are we in the present? We're not at this very moment in time. Okay? If I tell you right now, that's the present perfect progressive. So let's take a look at what we're going to be doing here. Remember, they can be interchanged in most cases, so long as you are following this rule right here. Let's go back. On page 19, I'm going to say it in what I'm not going to say the Portuguese because it's not going to translate word for word. So I'll just give you little hints as we go. Repeat after me. I have been playing soccer since I was a child. Repeat. What are we doing here? We are taking have plus been plus the verb, which in this case is play. Put the ing on it to make it playing. Em vez de jugar, jugando. Since is desde. Desde que era criança. Desde que era menino. Let's repeat it again. I have been playing soccer since I was a child. Again, we saw since. That's a starting point in the past. Number 2, she has been watching movies all day. Repeat. We see here again that the rule number 1, the action begins in the past, continues, and is still in progress, is what's being used. Number 3, we have lived here for 8 years. We have lived here for 8 years. Repeat. Agora, por que a gente está usando for? Em português traduz isso diferente. Faz 8 anos que a gente mora aqui. Esse é tense gramática completamente diferente. Por isso tem que mudar para o inglês e pensar que é present perfect. Por isso tem muita gente que dificulta quando aprende uma língua nova, porque ela segue as regras de sua própria língua. Então, não funciona. Você tem que falar assim. Repeat. We have been, take the verb now, living here for 8 years. 4 because it's followed by what? A quantity of time, like I explained before. Number 4, you have been listening to country music. Repeat.